I'm interested in the evolutionary and biological foundations of human love and sexual behavior. I've studied the quest for love and one-night stands on college campuses across North America. My colleagues and I have studied how men and women react to sexual infidelity in over 100 cultures around the world. My colleagues and I have looked at the genetic basis of infidelity. And most recently, we've looked at the hormonal levels of women at a U.S. sex club in Las Vegas. Very tedious work, of course. But today I want to talk about something that's affecting American culture in a much bigger way. Today I want to talk about how 100 million Americans are shaping society. Today I want to talk about U.S. singles. My collaborators on this study are Helen Fisher and Stephanie Coons. And together, in a study sponsored by the online dating site Match.com, we were interested in how are American singles shaping culture today? How are 100 million people, in their quest for love and their desire to find a companion, shaping who we are? And how are our perceptions of who these people are, right or wrong? We have a lot of perceptions about what it means to be single, what it means to be on the dating market at any given time. About a third of our population is on the market, but we have a lot of perceptions of what these people are doing and who they are, and they're not always right. So that's what I want to talk about today. The Single in America study is based on the attitudes and behaviors of 5,200 Americans. These aren't people who are on the dating site Match.com. This is a representative sample based on the U.S. Census. So we have the right number of men, right number of women, right number of whites, right number of blacks. So based on all these different demographics, we got right number of folks. It is the largest and most comprehensive study to date on singles. We know stuff about singles if we were going to say something like, in a given clinical trial, if we look at marital status, or we look at relationship status, we know something about married folks versus people in a relationship as a variable. But we don't know, what about people who are actively single, people who are on the dating market, people who are looking for love? Why do we need to know this? Because if we look at every culture around the world, if we look historically at the human condition, what are the two most consistent things that we can find? The drive for love and the drive for sex. These are the most consistent human desires in history. Sometimes we think that there's something wrong with singles. Sometimes we think that singles must not be able to find love. There's something wrong. Why are they single? Well, maybe it's okay if you're single for a little while. Maybe you're getting over an ex, or maybe you're just playing the field, or maybe you have to see what's out there. But if you're single too long, there's something not right. But at any given time, 100 million Americans are single, and at any given time, people that we know, often ourselves, are single. There's a constant turnover, so it's not the same 100 million. Maybe that would be problematic. But we turn over that. Okay. One psychiatrist in the 1950s said, except for the sick, the badly crippled, the deformed, the emotionally warped, and the mentally defective, almost everyone could and should wed. We have a very different view of what it means to be single today than we did 50 or 60 years ago. There's been a historical shift in America. Being single today isn't a sign that there must be something wrong with you. We have these misperceptions that I want to talk about today. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong. But historically, that hasn't been the case. There's a legacy of why we view singles a certain way. In a 1957 poll, psychiatrists categorized bachelors as immature, narcissistic, and even pathological. That was the men. The women had it worse. Single women were described as sexually warped, lacking the feminine instinct, and probably suffering from a bad case of penis envy. This is not terribly long ago. That if you were single in America, the view was there was something wrong. But until what point? Half of all women were married by age 20. Only 10% of women aged 25 to 29 were not married. Right? So this was the predominant script. The predominant script was you should marry. You could and should wed. Only 13% of households were composed of just one person. Typically, that was an older person. It was an elder, often having lost a spouse. And unmarried couples constituted less than 1% of households. We call this today cohabiting. We see more Americans today cohabiting with their romantic partners than ever before. 50 years ago, that wasn't the case. You were to wed someone if you were to live with them. You might be doing things that you shouldn't do if you're not married otherwise. And men who were still unmarried in their early 30s were often denied bank loans or promotions at work because the presumption was you were deviant, right? Thankfully, that's not the case today. In fact, some people argue today that when you are single, that's the only way you can get the promotion at work. The view of marriage and love and finding that partner has changed over the last 50 years in America. Right? We always presume that you should find that person, that if you were a bachelor too long, there was something wrong. That's not the case today. We glorify the bachelor and the bachelorette. In fact, we have primetime shows about it, about the looking for love, trying to find that partner. There's not something wrong with these people. These people are great entertainment. They need to find, so of course they're going to find someone. You're single? Well, this gentleman is single? Well, let's put 25 gorgeous women in front of you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to go on TV. That's very different than historically what we saw. But now I want to think about, well, what do we really think of singles today? If we're willing to put them on TV, what are some of these things that we think about them, and how true? What does the data tell us when we want to really understand who single Americans are? One common myth that we found, women are needy and clingy in relationships. In fact, women need more independence in relationships than men do. The man is slightly more clingy. In a relationship, women are more likely than men across every age group to want their own interests, have personal space, their own bank account, regular nights out with their girlfriends, and vacations on their own. In fact, 58% of men versus 77% of women need personal space in a relationship. Okay. This is for a number of reasons, including probably a legacy of the feminist movement. These are probably a good thing. There's a reason why women want these things in relationships. There's a history behind it, and it's probably a very wise decision. Okay. Another myth, guys don't want to get married and be pushed into having kids. In fact, we found that men are just as inclined to want to get married as women. Okay? Marriage is being, of course, this social contract that sits on top of our biological desire to find love, our biological urge to find a partner. Okay? In fact, 33% of men and 33% of women said they want to get married. Among singles without children under 18, more men, 24% than women, 15% say they want to have children. And among those ages 21 to 34, while 51% of men want kids, it's only 46% of women. So not only do both men and women want to get married and have kids, if we look finally at the numbers, there's a slight proportion higher men who want these things than women. Okay. Older people don't care about sex. I know this is one that upsets people sometimes. Old people like sex. Older men and women are less likely to compromise on either love or sexual attractiveness in order to have a committed relationship. Okay. In addition, older singles find sex while in a committed relationship more satisfying than other age groups. Everyone's slightly disturbed. My apologies. But why is that? Okay. We actually found something really interesting we asked how happy singles were. When we found this, we said, well, how happy are singles? We found a really interesting U-shaped curve. Who are the happiest singles? The very young and the elderly. In between, you have life and real stuff. It gets a little sad sometimes. But when you're really young, you're about to go out into the real world. You're really excited because my colleague Chris Ryder and I have been studying hookups for quite a while, including a group here at Binghamton University. I've been interested in what sexual hookups are, and for the last half-decade, we've been trying to understand how is it that you can publicly have a one-night stand with someone, but privately desire something more. We found that 50%, in a different study, we found that 50% of college students had engaged in a hookup, and one of their motivations was to look for a romantic relationship. I try not to be conservative, but I think the term casual sex is a misnomer. Sex is many things. It is a biological process. In fact, when you engage in sex, things like dopamine go off, and if it's really great sex, you get a spike of a hormone called oxytocin, which primes the body for bonding and attachment. Sex is many things, but physiologically, evolutionarily, it is not casual. There's an expression in Chinese called catching feelings, as if it's like a disease you could catch from sex. But you can catch feelings. 35% of singles have had sex with someone, and it's turned into love. That is not all that surprising. Another myth, finding romantic chemistry is always instantaneous. We have an idea that when you find someone, you walk in the room and you get blown off your feet. Someone just wows you, and that's what love is, and that's the only time love is going to work. But in actuality, love is a very different beast. Okay? 35% of men and women had fallen in love with someone that they were not initially attracted to, and 71% of men and women had become really smitten by someone on the basis of good conversation and mutual interest. It wasn't walking in the door and going, wow, this person has captivated me. It was getting to know the person, saying that we have things to talk about. There's an important message there. Often when we think that love can happen so instantaneously, we walk away too soon. What's the good message there is to give it a second chance. Talk to someone a second time. Love is often like a beautiful flower. It takes a little time to bloom. Okay? Last myth. Americans don't still care about monogamy. You might hear a lot in the popular news about the new monogamy. More Americans are engaging in things like swinging or engaging in things like open relationships. As a biologist, I find that a little difficult because we know a lot about infidelity. We know a lot about the evolutionary benefits of monogamy, social monogamy. In fact, 69% of singles regard fidelity as a must-have, and 70% of people believe that divorce is acceptable after one or both partners cheat. Of those who have experienced infidelity, 78% of people have broken up with their partner after the discovery. Americans still cherish a notion of monogamy. I want to end on a thought about monogamy, about what it means to be in a union, in a pair bond. These are gibbons. Gibbons are found high above the forest floor in Southeast Asia. Swinging through the trees at speeds of up to 35 miles per hour, they do something remarkable. They sing to each other. They chorus. In fact, some people have argued that the gibbon song is one of the most beautiful love songs in nature. As their bond grows tighter, their love songs actually become more synchronized with each other. If one of their partners is to die, or fall off a tree, or something happens, or sometimes divorce is the technical term in the animal behavior literature. But if the bond is to separate, and the gibbon forms a new bond, they will not sing the same love song to a new partner. That is, they will not sing the same love song twice. I can't help but think that gibbons are romantic. I know plenty of people who sing the same love song over and over and over again. Gibbons refuse. Monogamy is really interesting from an evolutionary and biological standpoint. How is it that with the drive for love, that as we look at over 5,000 single Americans who are out on the dating market, looking for someone to love, looking for someone to date, looking for someone to have sex with, that we still cherish this notion of finding one other partner, finding someone to defend a nest with, to raise a family with, to have a chorus with. In fact, my colleague Rose Chang and I have gotten really interested in this and recently studied what we call loveries, how romantic partners, adults, will sometimes do something similar. We don't chorus to each other. What do we do? 2/3 of people in romantic relationships talk to each other in baby voice. Why do you talk to someone you love like a baby? Coochie, coochie, coo, I love you. Hi! 2/3 of the people in relationships have what Rose and I call loveries. But the idea is that affiliative gestures, things to build these monogamous bonds, things to build this sense. The gibbon is our most distantly related ape relative. Okay? There is something unique evolutionarily and biologically about humans. The drive to love is not something of literature. It is something of biology. Thank you.